Catchweight interview number 13. Desmond the Predator Green. Explosive, dangerous, intelligent. Much like the Predator, Desmond Green is an absolute killer. With notable wins over Ross Pearson, Gleason Tebow, and Josh Emmett, Desmond the Predator Green is on a fast track to the top. Catchweight update here with Desmond the Predator Green. How you doing, Mr. Green?
Hey, what's up, bro? How you doing?
I'm good. Out of the gate, I'm a pretty big movie nerd, so I want to know, this is the Predator from the movie Predator, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. That's
yeah.
what it is.
Hell yeah! Oh, that's one of my favorite childhood movies of all time. So I was already happy to see that.
That's the one I was talking about too. The one from the '90s,
Hell
the
yeah.
early 2000s.
Yeah. So how you been, man? How you doing? You get any training done today?
Yeah, man. We had spar today, sparring at Hard Knocks. It went good, man. We did like eight kickboxing rounds straight, 3 minutes. It was a grind, but I love it. Like Tuesdays and Thursdays are our spar days.
Yeah.
And those are the happiest days I look forward to every week.
How hard do you guys go?
I mean, we go, bro. We probably go harder than the average. I'll put it like that.
Some
like,
people.
It's no pity pat, and like people get put down.
I like that. It's tough guy mentality shit right there. I love it. it.
So wear your mouth out for sure.
You train with Michael Johnson too, right?
Yeah, that's my boy. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys train at the same locations, or is it just for certain fights? How does that work out?
No, same location. So we train at Hard Knocks 365 in Fort Lauderdale. Michael Johnson's he's like one of my first friends, and I moved down here. I actually used to live with him for a little bit. Stayed in his basement. Yeah. He just
moved down to 145. He fought in the same card you fought. Was last week, right?
2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago.
Yeah, the 30th.
Man, you're on a streak recently. That was a great fight. I checked that out with Ross Pearson. I caught. I mean, it was only but one round.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about your style of fighting is I didn't hear about you until recently. And you wouldn't tell the level of wrestling you have just based off of like the fights you had. Like I looked it up, and you wrestled at University of Buffalo. You were a state champion here in Rochester, I think. In your high school, Henrietta High School.
Yeah. Big ups, Rochester, Henrietta. That's where I grew up at, baby.
Yeah.
585.
There we go. I looked into it a little bit, and you fight a lot. I mean, your striking is impeccable. Like I love.
Yeah. I fell in love with striking, bro. Like wrestling is what got me here. That's why I kind of neglected my wrestling because I was training because I wrestled for my whole life, so I knew everything there was to know about it.
Right.
And even with jiu-jitsu, like my wrestling was so good, like where I was beating black belt. So my primary focus is really on stand-up, and I just liked it so much, and I fell in love with it. And like, bro, I got 30 fights. I've never been knocked out. Never been knocked down.
That's the other thing. You're 21-8, and you've never been knocked
22,
out. 22. I'm sorry, my bad. 20.
No, I just caught that. Win. They haven't even updated on the UFC site. I'm waiting for them to update that shit.
There's a lot of...
Y'all updated it right when the motherfucker lose.
Right. But that's my other thing, right? So like you're a super intelligent fight. Like so I watch you fight. And I was watching you fight Gleason Tebow, and you were setting up that jab. You didn't really have to change much. He wasn't adjusting to the jab. It was so stiff, and it was so quick. He didn't really. He started getting a little wild in the third round. Then that's when you start piecing off. I saw different combinations coming out of there. You know, they throwing all the hooks and stopping them. But you fight so intelligently. You know, I don't see a lot of guys in that division that are going to pose most of a threat to you. You're huge. You're 5'10", right? I think you're about 5'10", 5'10.5".
Yeah. I'm probably actually a little under. I'm like closer to 6 foot, but I put 5'10" just because I want people to be a little bit more surprised when they step. Everybody always like, yo, you're not 5'10". Hey, it's better if you see me in person.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, listen, the one thing's for sure, you definitely make weight. That's the other thing that I noticed about a lot of those fights that you had, especially recently. A lot of them are guys missing like 5-6 pounds. You're fighting big guys. You're not fighting with small, tinier guys.
No, that's the thing. And I'm fighting guys that are like 5-6 fight winning streaks, and I'm fighting them in their own country. You know, I'm undefeated in the UFC in the U.S. I got 3 fights in the U.S., 3 wins. You know, out the country, it's a different story. Like two of the guys came in overweight, 5 pounds, like not just like a pound or two, 5 pounds overweight. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it, like, just put in perspective, when I stepped out last fight, my weight was 162. Right. So if the guys are coming in 5 pounds over, that means we're the same weight. The fight night and the weigh-in night, they're the same weight as me. You know what I mean? I'm not. Right. I'm big, but I'm not like a huge 155 pounder. That's why I like this weight class. You know, it's like perfect for me. But yeah, like I make weight every time. I'm fighting these guys that's coming in 5 pounds. If that's the case, I can fight at 145, bro, and come in at 151 and kill those guys.
And it's not like you're just beating other strikers. You're beating guys who are like predominantly grappler. You know, they're bigger, not much bigger than you are, but they're heavy, they're low to the ground.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of these guys, you pose a threat. Like you hear the big equalizers like jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all that stuff. You know, obviously having that base is making it way easier for you to avoid takedowns because you understand what's happening and where your body needs to be in order to set up, you know, whatever combinations or keep that distance, which you're great at, by the way. You're a very entertaining fighter to watch. You get to see all of those. You know, in a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of like Israel Adesanya a little bit, right? So like he's able to keep that distance and close that distance, and you're very aware of what's happening in the moment. You're very aware of their movement of what's happening. Now, you know, you've been in the game for a little bit. You I think you're 29 years old.
Yeah.
So you can tell that. I mean, even before fights I was watching before, I had to catch up a little bit on your career. You exuberate a very veteran presence. You don't get overzealous. If you knock a guy down, you're not over him trying to finish him right away. You're waiting him out. You're patient. So a lot of these things you're putting all together at once is it's translating into wins. And one of those things that we're talking about, how the UFC needs to update their website. I want to know how they're going to update your ranking because when you came in the UFC, you beat Josh Emmett.
Yeah, I know. That's my first fight in there, bro. I got some good wins under my belt, and then like even, bro, if you look at my last fight, my last loss versus Mirabek Chasumov, he's knocked out, I'm clean knocked out his last 5 opponents, and then I go fight him in his home country. He comes in overweight, and if you look at the fight stats, you think I won the fight. I had a better striking percentage, better everything. I think he only beat me in 1 category. I'm winning 3 out of the 4 categories, so it's just like how. But you know, like I said, that it just made me even know. I beat myself because I wasn't aggressive. That's why I came out this fight just ready to swing. Because I'm like, yo, bro, I should have beat this guy who everybody in the division was scared to even take a fight against, and I go out the country and fight him when he comes in 5 pounds over. So it just, like you said, bro, it's just all translating, and I'm telling you, bro, 2020, I'll be the champ. Like,
I want to see if you break that top 15. I mean, listen, 155 is a stacked division. You're in a stacked division right now. The division is full of guys just like yourself, super athletic, super skilled, veteran presence. So, I want to see that next, top 10, top 15 ranked up matchup that you have because that's going to be an interesting fight. There's not a ton of guys who are as big as you at the top and as skilled as you are.
That's why I can't wait to see who they give me next. I'm like, bro, unless they're in the top 10, and even if they are, I'm going to run through them.
You're trying to get that Rochester card, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go down. I'm hoping, but it don't look like it's going to happen. So whoever it is, I'm just like, yo, bring it. Because honestly, I was just warming up with Ross. Like, that was not, he got out early. I didn't even really get a chance to showcase what I really wanted to. Like,
shouts out to Ross Pearson for a pretty awesome career. He just retired recently after the fight you had.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I seen that. I made a comment under his picture. It was a pleasure to share the cage with him. He's a beast. Right. I watched many of his fights before I even got to the UFC. So, it's crazy. It's
interesting you say that too. I noticed that you're a student of the sport. I was watching you do. By the way, you're great in front of the camera. It's fun. It's fun. You're fun in the cage, off the camera. You got the grill. You're flashy. You're cocky. I love it.
I'm a total package, brother. That's soon enough. That's
That's great. But yeah, I was watching you do your interview, and you said you watched Anthony Rumble Johnson finish Gustafson the way you finished Pearson, getting that angle over him, and then I guess that what is that weird punt? What is that punt? What do you call that?
It's not a hammer fist.
Yeah,
and it's not like a straight punch. It's kind of like a hook,
Sure.
But like when you got somebody in that position, man, even if you seen the way I was throwing him, even if he had his guard up, he was gonna be rattled, and I could get that position a lot. And in previous fights, I always held back. It was something that was just like, having me cautious, and I finally broke that. And man, it's gonna be bad news for these guys in my weight class. I'm telling you.
And it's not, again. There's so many components to your own. I just feel like you're gonna be like the next star. You're just right at the cusp of getting beaten like a ranked guy in a spectacular way and getting shot up there because you're good in front of the camera. You're great at communicating. You're mentally tough, obviously, from years of wrestling and fighting, but you're fighting injured. I read that in that last fight you had 3 injuries. You had a groin injury, you had a torn ligament in your thumb and a fracture, and you had ligaments torn in your feet, and you opted out of surgery in order to fight.
Yeah, it's true. I'm not even exaggerating. All those is true. It was never a point where I thought of pulling out, but it was a point where I'm like, yo, another guy would easily pull out with these injuries, but I'm like, no way.
Right.
I told everybody, I'm like, yo, adrenaline is a hell of a drug because I just know once we get in there, like even the morning of the fight, I'm warming up, and I did a move, and it was kind of the same move where I finished him, where I had him in that position, because I practiced that move, and my groin, I just pulled him. I pulled it up like 10 days ago from the fight. Cause I'm like, all right, I got 10 days to get in shape, get this thing back ready. So I did a move and then hurt it, and I'm like, oh man. But I'm like, you know what? Like, yo, when you get in there, it's do or die. So I've been there before, bro. I fought with a broken broken bones in my hand.
So obviously you have to be a pretty motivated. Number one, you have to love the sport you're doing, first and foremost, right? So you're a student of the sport. Obviously you like watching it. Obviously you've been involved in combat sports for most of your life. Where does this hunger come from? Where does this drive come from? Is it just inside for this sport, or is it just a culmination of events? This is
I think
stuff.
It's my family, man. I grew up with a big family, a lot of brothers, a lot of cousins. I was the youngest of 2 brothers, and we had a lot of older cousins. And I just always had to hold my own.
Scrapping?
Oh yeah, I was a mama's boy, so I just had to, bro. I got into plenty of fights before I got into the UFC, which put it like that.
When did that shit stop? Is that they stop picking on you?
What you saying?
when did that shit stop? When they stop picking on you because you're the youngest?
Oh, bro. Oh man. Probably honestly not until I got to middle school and I started wrestling. Yeah. And I really started to be able to put them on their back and slam them. Then they're like, all right, look, I do, a little bit of skills. Yeah.
Stop picking on you.
I straight use wrestling moves right in the hood, bro. I had dudes like, yo, what are you doing? Like having in the front lawn, and the cradle, everybody looking like, damn, yo, you see what he just did?
They call you cheater.
Yeah,
they don't like the way whipping their asses.
I'm like, yo, ain't no rules, man.
Yeah. Hey, you got to be prepared. If you're gonna engage with violence, somebody in the street that you don't know, or even if it's someone you know, you better be prepared for whatever they're gonna bring to the table, right?
Man, ain't no. Once you get physical, everything's out the window.
I love it. Start making T-shirts.
Yeah.
You've fought in a lot of promotions. You fought in NEF. You started off. Do you start off in NEF? Where did you start off? You started amateurs.
Yeah. I guess you would call it amateurs. I was up in I think PA, somewhere up north. I did 3 fights in a month, literally 3 fights, 3 amateur fights in a month. I dusted everybody, and I looked at my coach like, bro, I need to go pro. Let's just start making money. Right. I had a kid in college, so by this time I was trying to make some money. So I did 3 amateur fights, and then started fighting on some local shows, and then I got on NEF. I fought on CFFC was one of the first local promotions I got on, and then I went from there to NEF, NEF to Bellator to Titan. I went overseas to Russia for a little bit, and finally, and then I got signed to the UFC. I had 25 fights. I feel like I could have been there, but I just wasn't under the right management.
You being a fighter in all of these, Titans is a big one, NEF's a big one, Bellator's obviously a big one, UFC's obviously a big one. Can you explain to me like the talent gap between Bellator and UFC? Is there much of a difference? I haven't talked to a lot of people who were in Bellator and then made it over to the UFC. So I just want to know, like, even for the layman, right? So like, what's the gap like different? Because you're fighting guys like Josh Emmett, Ross Pearson, like all these other gentlemen in 155.
Yeah, I would say it definitely it's a talent gap. I say when you get to like the B-level fighters, like the B-level fighters in the UFC. It's kind of like there's no like B-level fighters in the UFC. Or let's say this, there's no C-level fighters in the UFC. Mm-hmm. In Bellator, you have A, B, C, and D-level fighters, I feel like. In UFC, you only have A and B-level fighters.
Some of the best some of the best in the world, or some of the best in the states they come from. Like you being, obviously you being one of the better wrestlers in your area in Rochester and going over to university. How many people can say they wrestled D1? Not many, right? So for you to also that too. So you're saying you're clearing all these amateurs out. You probably face way tougher guys when you were wrestling.
100%. 100%. That's why I'm like, even fighting, some of the stuff, the takedowns I get away with, I'm like, I couldn't do this in high school with these guys. They need to go back and get some learning.
Fantastic. Yeah, man, that's pretty much. I know you're trying to wrap it up, trying to get the dinner in. I know you got 4 kids. You have a giant family over there in Florida. You got to get back to.
Yeah. No, I got a little more time. Yeah, man, okay. I got 4 kids, bro. One of them, my oldest, live in the Bronx, and then the other 3 down here with me. That's newborn, awesome. 4 months old is my boy.
How did you find your way down from Rochester to, you said, Michael Johnson's basement for a second?
It was really a crazy story. I was training in Canada at TriStar for a little bit, and then I got kind of caught up with like some weed charges. Okay. So I couldn't get back into Canada, and then my manager's like, I got a friend who owns a gym in Florida. So I came down here. Now he had 2 friends. The guy so I was supposed to visit ATT for 2 weeks and Black Zillions for 2 weeks. Okay. And he's like, which one you want to go to first? And me being me, I'm like, Black Zillions. That sounded a little bit more my flavor. Right. You know what I mean? So I came down here, bro, and I linked up with Michael Johnson, Sean Soriano, and a couple other like real solid dudes. And I'm like, yo, I didn't even go to ATT for a visit. I'm like, nah, I like it here. Right. Henry Hoof, like we hit it off, and Greg Jones, and I'm like, yeah.
You still train with Henry, right?
Yeah.
And I see that he cornered you as well.
Yeah, that's right. Hard Knocks 365.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that his place?
That's his place.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like, so like a couple years ago when the Black Zillions broke up. Right. Basically, pretty much everybody in the UFC and like all the A-level guys, they went with Henry Hoof to Hard Knocks 365. That's where we're at now. Right.
How does training work with like outside prospects? I know the world of MMA is pretty small. You don't necessarily need to be like a pro caliber fighter to like spar with somebody of your caliber. So, do you see anybody else, any other fighters outside of Michael Johnson that come to your gym to spar with you or have requested you? Because I know you said you don't pull guys out from other for fight camps. You just train with normal guys.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, bro, it's not too many guys that could come in and get better looks than the guys we got. Right. I mean, you look at my sparring partners, you got Michael Johnson, you got Gilbert Durino, you got Nick Lynch, you got Logan Walker, Kamaru Usman, Jason Jackson. I could keep on going.
Doesn't get much better. Doesn't get much better than that lineup. I mean? Like you guys can head a card tomorrow and clean house.
We just had Rumble before Rumble retired. He was in the camp. Yeah, we have Rashad Evans. All of these guys I train with. Because like I'm 155er, but I'm tall, so I give them the good looks and length. So like, man, the list goes on. Sean Soriano, right. Andre Sukumtov, you know, so like that's why we got so many high level guys in our gym.
Right.
It's almost kind of like ridiculous to bring somebody in.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I remember from watching like The Ultimate Fighter is like watching all these high level guys live with each other and constantly be around each other. They just sharpened each other up so much, and then having head coaches like Couture and Liddell and then name anyone else to have that type of veteran leadership mixed with some of the best sparring partners you can ask for. In your weight classes, that's a great culture that you guys have worked up there over there at 365. That's great. That's great.
Thanks, bro. Thanks.
And then, wait. So did you you hear about TJ Dillashaw today?
Yeah, bro. I just heard about that today. 2-year suspension.
Speaking of camps, right? So like that's a camp where Cody Garbrandt comes out a few years ago and is like, well, he's everyone on that team is taking steroids. Yeah. So what are your thoughts about other camps? Like that's not the only camp that in recent memory. Jackson Wink's another camp that I can think of where it's a high profile camp where people have been caught previously with issues like that. I guess TJ is affiliated with Ludwig, Dwayne Ludwig.
Yeah. I don't know, bro. All those guys, man. Whoever does that shit, that's for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I smoke my weed. That's about it.
So you still smoke?
Yeah. Oh,
me too.
Man. Fucking, I got to stop like a week or something before the fight, just because it allows us to have a little bit in our system, just not so much.
Not like before the fight. You have to have smoked right before you're like entering that fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Like unless you're like I like. Yeah, just stop fight week and you're good.
How long you been smoking for?
13.
13?
Yeah.
That's about the time when I started too. Yeah. High school, man. High school football. I'll never forget it.
You gotta love it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm not a drinker. I don't like.
Yeah, exactly. Me neither.
I've had issues with it in my family, just historically, and I just don't like the way it makes me feel. It always drains me the next day.
I'm the same way, bro. Same way. I drink. I'm messed up the next day. I smoke.
Yeah.
I could just wake up and do it again.
Yeah. It helps me. It regulates my sleep for sure. But like after like a brutal workout or whatever the case may be, it just relaxes my whole body. There's nothing. It doesn't get any better than that. For me, at least, I don't even smoke to get like really high anymore because I don't really get that high anymore.
Yeah, I do. I tell people it's more for routine for me.
Yeah, just meditation.
Yeah, bro. I'm at it like 4 or 5 times a day. Like, I literally smoke before everything.
Before you spar and all that?
Yeah, bro. Every morning, I'm smoking like 5 joints a day on average.
Are you worried about what that's gonna do to your lungs at all?
No, bro. No.
Obviously not.
I go out of papers and I work out so much.
Yeah,
bro. I go outside and run a 6-minute mile right now.
That's like such a huge misconception, and I love that. I remember like 5 years ago, this conversation would be like,
Yeah, I love it now, yo. But once the UFC gave the green light on us smoking weed, I'm like, you're my company.
Yeah. It's it's great. It's great. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but it definitely had some benefits at least. I have such a hard time, like running and doing cardio and shit like that. So I would just get like blasted high and just go hit the bag for 30 minutes and forget I'm doing it, or like do stairs or something. So it's really helped me. That whole misconception about lazy people smoking and all that stuff, or I think some lazy people smoke, but like look at you, like what I mean? Like what I mean?
No, but I was in college. I had workouts at 6 a.m. I was up at 5:30 rolling the J.
How did that work in college? Like I know they're pretty stringent with. Are they stringent with testing in college as far as?
Yeah. I had some trouble with that.
Well, Luz obviously has an impact. They say things like happen for a reason, right? So, like,
for sure.
How would you have found your way here? I'm not saying you wouldn't have eventually, but it seems like all the time that you've taken to get to where you're at.
Yeah, everything that I've done has evened out and leveled out and gotten me where I'm at. So, if I had a time machine, I'd probably just take the same steps.
Same exact steps.
Yeah,
I'll maybe make a couple of bets or some shit from some Super Bowl games, get some of that extra money rolling in. 100%.
Yeah.
But that's great, man. That's great. Do you find CBD works at all for you?
Nah, not really.
I don't. I heard about topical ointments and stuff. Yeah.
When my knee hurt, I'd rather take J to the face and a couple of drops.
Where does this flashy persona come from? Where have you always been this way?
Yeah, I had bro since a kid, man. I remember when I got a paper. I was in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And the teacher asked what we wanted. And I was like, I want a ring on every finger. I don't know, gold ring on every finger. I was in 3rd grade. My mom still kept the paper. Because I wear jewelry, love it. But I don't know, I always did, man. We from Africa. I'm a king.
Yeah.
Gold is in my blood.
I feel that. Do you feel, I mean, listen, we're not from the same area. I lived in New Jersey. You lived in New York, so obviously there's different. I guess a different element, but I mean we're both aware of what happened. Like some people are out there like with ill intent for people who come out, doing better for themselves or being positive and trying to do better for themselves. Has that ever anything you worried about? You think about shit like Nipsey Hussle getting murdered recently in his neighborhood. Other rappers, people of that stature. Is that anything that ever crosses your mind? Like,
No, I mean my town crazy. Like we had like the highest murder rate in New York like a couple years back.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of family in my town, and I got a lot of I got a lot of love in my town, so I don't really ever worry about that. I ain't never did nobody that wrong and ain't deserve it.
Right.
So ain't nobody looking for me.
That's good, man. It's just so crazy out there. Like I heard a few Nipsey songs recently. I heard a couple in barbershops every now and then, but I didn't really affect me because I didn't really know him that well. So I started like looking into him, and like he's done a lot for his community, and he's done a lot for just people on the West Coast, other people trying to get themselves up, and it's just real sad. It's real sad to see something like that happen to a guy who's trying to make a difference like that.
Man, that's life. Should life be crazy like that?
Yeah. You ever go back to Henrietta?
Oh, all the time, bro. All the time. I go back often.
They got a statue in your honor?
I got heavy roots in there. Heavy roots.
That's great. You sticking true to what you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I wish I gotta cut it.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
That's just about everything I have right now anyway. Des, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can have you on again. Is there anything you want to plug? Any sponsor, anything like that? Anything that you need to plug or anything like that?
Nah, just shout out to my kids. Shout out to the fam. Catch me on Instagram, Twitter, Predator Tune. Big ups to my gym coaches. God, Jesus, real religious.
Hey, you heard it here first. Catchweight update. Thanks again, Des. I really appreciate it, man.
No problem.
Peace, bro. Thank you for watching episode 13. I had a blast. Thank you so much, Desmond Green. I had a blast talking to you. Interesting guy, bright future. He's like this close from being like the next superstar. He's great in front of the camera, as you plainly saw. Great athlete, highly skilled, super intelligent. Man, like, I'm excited. The jump to, right, is to be like, well, you're biased because you just interviewed him. Like, all right, there's like a part of a bias there because like I think he's a great guy, but at the same time, like if I didn't talk to him, I was already, the intrigue was there. I just recently, I've seen him fight before. I've seen him fight Gleason Tebow. Then I remembered him when I watched the UFC Philadelphia card. That was like the first fight that I watched off that card, and then I watched the females fight after that. I forgot their names, but that was a brawl. But I watched Desmond Green. I'm like, oh, I'm actually psyched to go see him because I've seen him fight Gleason Tebow, and he starched the guy. He starched Ross Pearson. Like that's a big deal. Obviously he's honing his skills, and I feel like they're there. We know about his wrestling background, so this is like a serious contender that we're talking about here. I want to see him fight another top 15 guy at 155. Maybe he runs it back with Josh. I think Josh is coming off a victory. That's an interesting fight. And then you have to imagine, right, if he wins that fight, then they're going to swap positions. Maybe Josh goes down or stays where he's at, or maybe depending on how the victory is, we might see Desmond go up above Josh. I mixed Josh and Emmett. So I really, I'm excited, and I'm sure he's excited too, and he knows. Like on top of the cockiness, like of course, like people are cocky. Not all the time. Some people are just cocky and are just dumb. But It's not the case with him. Like, he's cocky because he knows his skill level. He doesn't fight cocky. He doesn't fight cocky, which is one of the reasons why he doesn't get caught. Go back and watch his fights. There are plenty of times where I've seen other fighters, like Aaron Pico. That's another good example, right? Aaron Pico is like a highly skilled fighter, and he'll get caught because he's just a little overzealous. That veteran mentality that they want Aaron Pico to have, Desmond Green's already have that. He has that. Desmond Green's got the athleticism. He's got the ability to talk in front of the camera. He's big. He's like 5'10", 5'11". He says 6 foot, but, you know, I got to go by what's on the paper. You know, in person, I'm sure he looks 6 foot, whatever the case may be, and I'm sure he is 6 foot. But, you know, it is what it is. But aside from all that, aside from his, you know, from his past, like, I really want to see what he does. And I want to see what the UFC does. I think he's on their radar. I think they're aware of this stuff. They're just got to line up the right stuff. All these fights that he's had lined up have all happened for, like, a reason. You know what I mean? You don't fight guys like Ross Pearson and Gleason Tebow and Josh Emmett in the UFC for shits and giggles. Like, those are strategically picked opponents. Those are some blue chip guys. They all represent, like, a threat that people would talk about if they didn't know about his background about wrestling, like myself. So I watched his fights before I came up, and then I did my research. I want to see what he looked like first fighting, and I want to see his progression over his career. And I couldn't tell that he was a wrestler, and I don't mean that as a knock. And it's not because, obviously not the way he looks. Like, he looks like a Olympic god. You know what I mean? But it's just like, you know, he doesn't fight like I've seen other wrestlers fight before. He fights like someone who learns Taekwondo, like someone who's a boxer or a striker. He's picked those skills up. Like, he didn't start off there, so he's picked those skills up pretty well, and he's like used mostly that to beat the people that he's fought. And knowing that he's got this Division I talent as a wrestler, wrestling out of University of Buffalo, being an all-MAC champion there, being an all-state wrestler at Henrietta as high school in Rochester, which is like a pretty big high school. I did some research on that place. They spent $15 million recently on a sports complex. Like, this is like a highly touted high school that we're talking about. I know wrestling in New York and New Jersey and California is a big deal. So to be a state champion at 149, I think 149, and I think he competed at 167 or something like that when he was in high school. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. You know, his heart's in the game. He loves this sport. So he's got all the makings of a champion. You know, will that translate into his next fights? I can't read a fucking crystal ball, but I'll tell you that he'll give anybody that steps inside that octagon just as much trouble as anybody in the top 10 or top 5. So I'd like to see what happens. Thank you again. And shouts out to First Round Management, who is also hooking me up with Austin Tweedy from the WXC. He's coming off a knockout victory for the interim championship belt there for 155 pounds. For those of you who don't know, the WXC is owned by the UFC. The UFC considers it a feeder league. The CFFC considers it is like that. You know, Invicta is like that. Willow Say Black is a fighter out of there. They've got some legitimate fighters out of there. If you don't have Fight Pass, you should definitely get it. I'm not shilling for the UFC, but I will take paychecks because, like, why not? As far as all that goes, you know, he's fighting in what I consider a legitimate league and what other fighters would consider a legitimate league in Michigan, in the WXC. He's got a very interesting story. He was involved in a very bad collision that hurt his back. He had a very bad back injury, and I'm sure they had a conversation with him about him not even possibly, like, being able to fight again. So he's coming off of that. He's coming off of a loss. He was in the Contender Series. So he's overcoming adversity. So now he's back, and he's flashing like what his potential was and what his potential is. So it's gonna be very interesting to talk about his past, talk about what he wants to do, what his goals are. You know where his heart's at, because obviously your heart's got to be in the sport. You know what I mean? To go overcome all of that and then come back to the WXC and then knock out a highly touted guy who's getting considered to go into the UFC. That's a big deal. We're talking about some of the best fighters in the world when you go to the UFC. So if you're being considered by the UFC, you have to imagine there's millions of fighters all over the world. So being considered is a big deal. To make it to one of those feeder leagues and travel up the ranks, so much so where you're able to fight the interim guys off of a hiatus, off of a loss. That's a big fucking deal. He's a great athlete. It's a great athlete, and, you know, from what I hear he's a great person, so I'm super excited. Then after that, we're going to cover UFC 236, Jarrett and myself. Gonna cover that. Maybe cover over the Philadelphia card a little bit because that was just a great card. Cover current events, and hopefully we can link up with first round again. We have a couple guys lined up, so right now we have a concurrent schedule for content. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for the support. Like, subscribe, whatever the YouTube fuck faces say. Wherever the buttons are. It really means a lot. It really means a lot, and now like my hard work is paying off. Jared and I have put in the time, and now we're getting legitimate. Not that we weren't getting legitimate fighters before, but we're getting like the same caliber of people, but like way more of them. Like it's difficult to just reach out to certain people because that's basically what I do. If you like my my video, or you like my picture or whatever I make on Instagram and I put it up on Instagram, you like it and you're a fighter, I best believe I'm harassing them. I send messages. That's the best way I can do it. So it really takes a lot of pressure off of me when I have guys who are in my corner who are willing to help me, so I can help them promote their fighters and make them money, just by sheer getting attention. So I couldn't be happier with where I'm at right now. Thank you so much. Thank you first round. Thank you Desmond Green again. Thank you Willis. Thank you Josie J. She's a champion now. Blake Builder, Marvelous Vargas on Instagram. It's Ruben Vargas. There's tons of people. I have 13 people that I have to remember. Elliot Marshall, all those people. All those people who helped me get into the position I'm at today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we're gonna do more. I'm doing more. It's getting traction. So, peace, love, and gap, y'all.